HooHooHooRobin.
Oh, we have an important caller.
We got Dave Rabbit on the phone. Dave.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Opie Anthony Show. How are you, sir?
Hey, brothers. What's happening?
Well, we've been having a lot of fun playing some clips from your underground radio show from 1970, Saigon, Vietnam.
I love it, brother. I love it, yeah.
And I got to tell you, I started radio in college, and I was in a fraternity, and this guy Stork and this guy, I think Joe also had it, or I think we might have got it from Joe, had this tape of you doing First Termer. It was called First Termer, right?
Yeah, radio First Termer,
And we were amazed by this cassette, and no one knew anything about you. No one knew anything about the show. And we would listen to it every once in a while. And then I got a copy of it. I just threw it in a box. And I don't know, 15, 20 years go by, and all of a sudden I'm unloading my apartment, and I find this thing, and I'm like, oh my God, I used to love this tape, and I brought it on into the show, and we've been playing it and just freaking out about it.
Yeah, E-Rock sent me a copy of the show yesterday. I wasn't available to listen to it, but yeah, you guys rock and roll, brother. You really do.
Well, you had quite the show back then. I mean, what was it? Were you a pirate station? Were you taking over a signal? How did it actually work?
Well, I mean, Reader's Digest version, it actually started when I was on my second tour in Fan Rang. I was associated with a legal AFVN radio station called Radio Fan Rang, and my roommate, Jim Brookshire, is the one that got me involved as his studio engineer. And as it turned out, when I left that assignment to go to Saigon, we had a rocket attack that morning that I was leaving to go back home on R&R, and a rocket landed in our room, killed Jim.
Wow.
And, if I had been laying there, I'd been dead too. So it really rocked me to my roots, because this was just a generous, sweet, loving guy that would have, done anything for anybody in humanity, and it was a senseless war to begin with. And the fact that he was taken angered me tremendously. So when we got to Saigon, my mission was to do something that AFVN was never going to do, or Stars and Stripes, and that was to bring rock and roll to the troops on the front lines. And I'm talking the Army and Marines, the guys that were every day lugging through all the swamp and the forest and the trees and all that. And then that's what we did. And, it took us 2 months in pre-production just to get everything together to where we could even get on air.
So you decided you couldn't go onto a regular radio station. How did you decide where to broadcast from? I mean, this was done basically from a whorehouse, right?
Yeah, I mean, Pete Sadler, not his real name, was a frequent flyer at Madame Ho's. And so anyway, he says, I said, we need a place, and we couldn't do it on the base, obviously. I mean, that was a little bit a little no-brainer. So he says, well, yeah, let's go down to Madame Ho's. And I said, okay, sure, and we met Madame Ho, and offered her gave her one of those Vito Corleone things, an offer she couldn't refuse. It basically was she got to keep the mattresses and all the equipment when we got through. Wow. Kind of barter situation,
Well, they set up the studio I should just jump in real fast. They set up the studio by lining the room with mattresses and stuff to keep out the outside noises, keep out the moanings that is going on down the hall.
There was a lot of that too, brother.
Yeah.
Man.
So you set up in this whorehouse, and how long did you actually do the show for?
We lasted 21 days, and mainly because we didn't want to go to Long Binh, which was the prison in Vietnam. They were really after us. The base commander, I don't know whether you played that little snippet yet, but the base commander was not a big fan of Radio First Termer or Dave Rabbit. He made it a vow to find me and toss my rabbit buttocks into the prison system. And I just, there was something about the prison life that just didn't appeal to me. So even though we had military police and officers and lifers that were actually protecting us, we had to shut it down. There was just no way we could have continued on more than 21 days. And so we demolished everything. We gave the equipment to Madame Ho, and then we got rid of everything, burned everything. Where there was no trace that connected us to the show. And we walked out the back door of Madame Ho's house and, and never looked back.
Yeah, you were saying some ballsy stuff for back then and for being in the military especially and broadcasting to the military. I'm sure they didn't really enjoy some of the stuff you were saying about the lifers and the brass and whatnot.
Well, you know, I mean, the officers, I mean, there's always a percentage of them that couldn't take a joke, as well as the lifers, but you would be real surprised how many huge fans we had that were in the officer ranks as well as the top military ranks of this, you know, the regular stripers.
So you did this radio show for 3 weeks, and were you surprised that the tapes had gone out all over the world?
I tell you what really blew me away. I mean, as I say, we walked out on the 21st of January of 71 and never looked back. In the summer of 1982, I'm at a party here in Dallas, and I'm talking to this guy, and we're just, you know, shooting the breeze, and it turns out he was in the Army in Germany, Wiesbaden in Germany. And he said, well, what did you do? I said, I was in Vietnam. He said, hey, did you ever hear of Dave Rabbit? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, man, he says, that guy really ruled. Did you listen to him live? I said, yeah, I really did. And then one thing led to another, and I said, well, you're not going to believe this, but I'm Dave Rabbit. And he goes, nah, you're not Dave Rabbit. And so I did, you know, I remembered a couple of the bits, you know, about the toothpick in the toilet and the crabs pole vaulting and stuff. And so I kind of did it. He says, oh my God. And he actually hits the floor and starts bowing down to me. And I'm going, what is all this about? He says, man, he says, you're a legend in Germany. I'm going, how am I a legend in Germany? Because I'm thinking, you know, the last show we did was the 21st of January, 71. This is 82. How can I be a legend in Germany? And then that's when I found out that somebody recorded one of the shows, and I have a good idea that it was the radio relay guys that were bumping our signal throughout Cambodia, Laos, and Southeast Asia.
All illegally, by the way.
Yeah,
that took balls on their part. You know? Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's when I first found out that a show existed. And you know, February 9th, 2006, I get on the internet, the kids want to know stuff about Vietnam, and I'm, you know, Googling, which I never do. I hate to Google. Well, occasionally on Friday nights I like Googling, but only if I have a bar of soap. Anyway, so what happens is that I get on the internet, and I find this site that says audio clips from Vietnam, and I'm thinking, okay, cool. And I see when it says Radio First Terminal. Well, I click on it, then I find Will Snyder's site, who created the original Dave Rabbit home, and get on that and see that he has these clips. And then I start Googling and find AboveTopSecret.com, which is my family right now that I have with the ATS Mix Show. And then one thing leads to another. It's just been a crazy, crazy ride. It really has.
Yeah, because, I mean, when I found out you only did 21 shows, that amazed me. Obviously, the people that taped these things thought it was so unusual and so different and so cool that they obviously wanted to trade them and give them to other people. And then that's where this whole thing grew. Because no one gets popular from doing 21 radio shows. No one.
Well, I did.
No, I understand that, but
that means live, like it's all.
Dave,
like,
Dave, that was actually a compliment. Like, no one just does 21 shows and that's it. I mean, you obviously had something. You basically had the voice of the soldiers. That's why they could relate to you, and that's why this thing becomes a phenomenon, because they're like, wow, you got to hear this tape. We all remember when we were a lot younger, if we heard something really cool, you could say Jerky Boys or whatever, you wanted to pass this tape on to others. And that's how this whole thing ended up just becoming huge.
Yeah, and it's one of those things to where, you know, you get something and you pass it on to a buddy and kind of thing. And that's really how it grew. I mean, conservatively, we have 23 million military and civilian fans worldwide right now. I mean, strictly from, you know, them finding the internet, they finding the stuff on the websites and stuff, and strictly, you know, passing it on to somebody. That gives you a great idea of how grassroots movements can really be very effective.
Right.
What did you do when you came back from Vietnam? What happened with your life? Did you do radio? Did you pursue it at all?
No, and here's the weird thing. I came back home. My family had a business here in Dallas. My dad and mom were not of the best health, and so I took that over and kind of put my radio career on hold. And then when I got involved with AboveTopSecret.com and my partners, Simon Gray, Mark Allen, Stephen Melzer, Bill Irwin, and, of course, my partner, Johnny Anonymous, we started this, the ATS Next show about 8 months ago and started doing a podcast. And then, you know, one thing led to another, and the show got real popular, and we got huge fan base going. And now, as I told E-Rock yesterday, we're on the verge of going nationwide syndication in the next 3 or 4 months. So it's a pretty amazing ride. 37 years later, but...
Yeah, so you walk away from radio 37 years ago, which obviously you had the passion to do it. That had to kill you, and you only got back into it 8 months ago?
Well, actually, yeah, we started the show 8 months ago, right.
And you didn't do any radio in between for the most part?
No.
Oh, my God, that's amazing.
What kind of work did you do?
Well, I don't want to tell too much about that because everybody will be going on the doors. I sold my business actually last May and decided to do this full time, and that's kind of I took a leap of faith. I figured, if I'm going to do this at 59, boys, I know you were using your calculators trying to figure out how old I am.
Yeah.
But at 59, I figured, if I'm going to do it, I got to go do it now. So I sold my business and really turned my back. But basically, to answer your question, it was just a business that was in marketing. I was in marketing in a general degree.
Have you kept your identity private for all these years about who Dave Rabbit's real name?
Oh yeah. In fact, when I went to AboveTopSecret.com originally, when I Googled it, and I thought, what the heck is AboveTopSecret.com? And I click, and this guy by the name of John Jeremiah, and his post is still there on the site. He thinks I'm a conspiracy theory of the government, and that the United States government put me in Saigon to, for some kind of war effort kind of thing. And I'm thinking, this is nuts. This is crazy. And from that, a love affair began between me and AboveTopSecret.com because I lovingly call it Disneyland for nuts. But, boy, it's just so much more than that,
Yeah, it looked like you guys were having a great time.
Why do you keep it, why do you not want to reveal who you are?
Well, one reason is that, my wife, Bunny, and my son, Jack, and Peter, and of course, Babs and Bugs, it's amazing how many people will see me on the street and they don't have a clue who I am. See, I like going in my life in stealth mode.
I kind of like that. I don't know who you really are.
Well, that's the mystique about it. If everybody knew, that I'm really, George Stephanopoulos with ABC Radio, that would really blow the whole thing, they just couldn't identify with that.
It's actually Rush Limbaugh's alter ego.
I love that.
So you're doing the show every night with your pals and stuff, and every day you're thinking this is going to be the last show. There's no way I could keep this going, right?
Oh, well, every day was a gamble. It really was, because, they were trying to find us with triangulations and all kinds of stuff. And it was really impossible for them to do it because of the radio relay guys. We were on 3 hours only, during that window of opportunity. So, they tried. They tried real hard. But here's why we stopped. The military police, the OSI, Office of Special Investigation, the military, these guys, a lot of them were our friends. They knew about us. They were encouraging the show to, get on the air. So when they got to a point to where their supervisors were saying, look, there's no reason in the world that you're not finding these guys unless you're implicated with him. And they started getting a lot of pressure. And I'll never forget it as long as I live. A very good friend of mine in the OSI office comes up to me and says, Dave, you got to stop. He says, because if you don't, we're all going to go down. And I said, okay, that's it. And that's when we stopped.
So they protected you for as long as they could until it was obvious they were protecting you.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And you come back and you live your life. You go 37 years and you start up again. And did you know that there were so many recordings of your show floating around, like different shows, or did you only have one copy yourself?
Well, we found a reel-to-reel that was some trooper found in his. It's kind of like Opie found in his little box and stuff. This guy had a reel-to-reel. He had an old TIAC. And we basically paid him money to transfer it into a digital format for us. Wow. And the ones that we have right now on the Dave Rabbit site, the pod site, which is daverabbit.podomatic.com, has the remastered version of the entire show. And plus we've got, the Iraq show, which I did as a 35th anniversary with a new team. But yeah, there's over 500 bits of Dave Rabbit stuff on that site. Because I can't put everything on AboveTopSecret.com because we're G-rated.
Right. Yeah, right.
We're a family site. I can't put a lot of the Dave Rabbit material there. But, those guys that really like that kind of stuff, there's a ton of it on the DaveRabbit.podomatic.com site.
What are you doing now as far as your podcast? What kind of show you're doing?
Well, it's about what we are, which is our ecosystem that was created by the genius Simon Gray, who was the founder of AboveTopSecret.com. We lovingly call them the Three Amigos. And basically, it's about alternative subjects such as conspiracy theories, 9/11 conspiracy theories, UFOs, aliens. Just anything that you can imagine that would be a topic of conspiracy or whatever would be what we're talking about. I mean, they have weaponry, resources and uploads, really above top secret societies. It's just a smorgasbord, if you will, of every alternative topic you can possibly think of.
Is it kind of like, I'm sorry to interrupt, Dave, is it kind of like a coast-to-coast, like Art Bell type subject?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because in my respects to George and Art Bell and those guys over at Coast to Coast, but what we do is we take the same subjects, but instead of being there like two squirrels going 69, which is exciting for a few minutes and then it kind of loses its appeal, we put levity and humor and put a lot more at ease with our guests, and we just have a good time. We rock and roll when we get with our people. We rock. We get them a little taste of Dave Rabbit, but on a FCC compliant basis, if you know what I mean.
Very nice. Well, Dave, we definitely have to take a break here. This was a pleasure, though.
Great talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I have to tell you guys were an inspiration. We just donated $25,000 to the Girl Scout organization for their new drive to sell garlic butter sauce.
Hey, can you do a little Dave Rabbit as we go to break here, or what?
Oh, sure, yeah. You want to just to do a typical outro here?
Yeah, sure.
All right, listen, on behalf of the Opie and Anthony show here in New York City, this is Dave Rabbit. Peace.
All right, thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Good luck, buddy.
We'll be in touch, all right?
Brother.
All right, there he goes, Dave Rabbit.
Guy's a 21-day legend.
Yes, amazing.
That's what I'm saying.
And it lasted that long.
Yeah.
Cool story.
Absolutely. Why don't we go back in time? Dave Rabbit, Vietnam, 1970, doing the underground radio show that we just discussed for the last few minutes.
Good evening. This is Air Force Sergeant Dave Rabbit.
And this is Nugent.
With tonight's news. In Washington today, President Nixon was officially charged in connection with the My Lai massacre. Although the president was nowhere near Vietnam at the time, higher-ranking officials are positive that there is some connection. What, however, they aren't sure of. No comment from the president was available. Nugent?
In Alabama, Governor George Wallace is announced as his running mate for the presidential election as H. Rap Brown. Rap was not available for comment, but his associates say it was the happiest day of his life.
A blissful event has occurred for Tiny Tim and his wife, 19-year-old Miss Vicky. They have announced the coming birth of their first child. When asked about the nervous tension and stress of having a first child, Tiny Tim stated that he's sure he'll have no problem giving birth the first time. He also stated that the baby will be breastfed. Miss Vicky also said that Tiny will have to have his chest shaved so the baby won't gag on the hairs.
Finally in the news, Lyndon Johnson was arrested in his Texas home for indecent public exposure after he led a group of Vietnam protesters down Main Street. Johnson was also cited on 10 counts of public vulgarity and 1 count for shooting the finger at an Air Force officer. Preliminary hearing dates have not been set yet.
And that's the news. This is Air Force Sergeant Dave Rabbit.
And Nugent.
Wishing you a very good evening.
The voice of news, information, and hard acid rock music. This is Radio First Termer at 69 megacycles on your FM dial.
Wow.
Little pieces of history. It's pretty cool, you know?
Absolutely.
Here in the, what was going on back then, and them goofing on it.
Anthony from Boston, do you think Good Morning Vietnam's Robin Williams is based on Dave Rabbit? Absolutely not.
No, Adrian Cronauer, I believe.
Yeah, he was around the same time, obviously, but Dave Rabbit was doing his own thing. Very, very different, actually, because Robin Williams, the character he played was high energy. This guy was all about just kind of sounding or being stoned.
I've had a few requests for some pictures of myself. So some of you people wanted to hang some on your walls or in the latrines or something. But to tell you the honest-to-God truth, I have really no pictures of myself that can be made into posters. However, I do have one picture that some of you might want. It's a picture of myself and my ex-girlfriend going in her bathtub. Now, if you'd like a copy of this, which is blown up, by the way, into an 8x10 glossy colored photograph, just drop me a card to Dave Rabbit, Pornographic Picture Poster, APO in Country, 96969, and I'll try to get one to you. More music now. Donovan, hurdy-gurdy man.
Man. Hurdy-gurdy man.
He was making up all this crap, because who would want a picture of him? He only broadcast for 3 weeks. You know?
Although he's probably getting a lot of letters, though. I mean, he had 20-something million people.
He probably that guy would make an impact pretty quickly with the soldiers, I think.
Yeah.
Mouthing off like that about stuff.
Cornball radio they were used to.
Yeah.
And then he's just dropping F-bombs and taking a dump.
About screwing his girl and the whores, and it's good stuff.
In answer to some of your questions as what the base commander thinks of me, here are his exact words.
If I ever meet that son of a bitch, I'm going to walk up and I'm going to hit that right square in the goddamn teeth. More than once.
Would you believe that's what the base commander thinks of me and my nasty ways? Tisk, tisk, tisk. You, sir. Notice I emphasize the word sir. He has an inferiority complex. I mean, after all, anybody that dresses up in women's dresses and carries a velvet purse has to be a little bit weird.
What a set, man.
No kidding. And finally, the last clip, the show ending. This was the last show right here? Of this particular show.
Well, unfortunately, troops, it's that time again for good old Pete and myself. We've just about reached the ending of another radio first summer for the night. And we'd like to leave you with a few closing thoughts. First off, remember, there is no black power or white power in Vietnam. There's only one power, and that's rabbit power. Another thought, when you go downtown, be sure to take enough rubbers along in case you want to go for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 like Pete does. Well, Pete, I've enjoyed it. It's been another fantastic night of cutting the Air Force to pieces and saying nasty things on the air. And hopefully, if we're not thrown in jail by tomorrow night, we'll be able to come back again at 8 o'clock and blow your mind with more hard acid music. So, on behalf of myself and for good old Pete, we'd like to say goodnight to each other. Pete, let's say goodnight to each other. Good night, Pete. Good night, David. Sounds professional, doesn't it? Huh? Be tuning in again tomorrow night. Please, don't whack off. Listen to Radio First Comer instead. It's more filling. Okay, Pete. We haven't practiced this, folks. This is our new ending. Alright, we say good night, Vietnam, right? Alright, wait a second. Okay, folks, this is going to be one of the real biggies. Are you ready for this? Wait a minute. Don't start counting up, Pete. 1, 2, 3. Good night, Vietnam!
I couldn't make out what he said there at the end.
He had that good morning, Vietnam.
Huh?
Didn't you write that he had good morning? He ended it with good morning, Vietnam?
No. He ended it with good evening, Vietnam.
Good evening,
okay.
Vietnam.
Okay.
All right, we got to take a break. We're real late, but there you go. Dave Rabbit.
Robin.